everybody for joining the Chamber and Sandbox today for our free webinar entitled Leadership in Times of Crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic has pushed all of us into unknown territory, forcing us to make critical decisions quickly with little information, but potentially huge impact on our businesses, our teams, and our families. Leadership is a crisis and is very different from leadership under normal conditions. And Rich Grof is here to explain what is required of you as a leader to guide your business through the current chaos. So after the presentation, we're going to have roughly, give or take, 20 minutes of Q&A. And to submit a question, everybody, please choose the submit question to moderator option within your Zoom platform. Type out your question and I will read this off to Rich. And now at this time, I'm happy to introduce our speaker today, Rich Grof. Rich has coached and inspired individuals and groups for over 20 years to become confident, empowered, successful, and enthusiastic. He is a specialist in human success dynamics and the psychology of success with a focus on clients' high performance triggers. Rich, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Todd. Well, welcome everybody to this presentation. I want to let you know that this presentation's got a lot of different meat to it. So in the time that we have, we are going to cover it. You will probably have some other questions or maybe some things that apply specifically to you that you might want to put in the chats or comments. I will get back to you if we can't get through everything today or you have something personal that you'd like to discuss. I'd be glad to help out in any way, shape, or form that I can. I want to let you know where this comes from so you can kind of see where we do things. We work with business owners all across North America, as I was telling Todd earlier, and we've been on Zoom for a lot of years doing exactly what this is all about. In the last, since COVID took place, we have seen, a certain thing happen. Normally, when we're working with our clients, we have what we call SOS calls, where the client will call us and ask us for different information about how to deal with an employee or how to deal with a situation, some of which is psychology, some of which is technical. Now, at the technical side, that's very easy, get this particular app, do that. But the psychology side is very interesting because it requires a certain level of change in their leadership to actually affect a change. In the last number of weeks while we've been in COVID, we have seen upwards of 500% increase in the amount of strange things happening to the wonderful people that work in our small businesses. What that means is, there's a lot taking place emotionally, and this is a very, very, very emotional time. And so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to give you some clues about what you can do, and we're going to talk about the leadership style that you're going to need to probably embrace so that you can actually make it through. Now, I do have a presentation, so I'm just going to go right to that and share the screen, and then we'll get back to it. And in about roughly 35, 40 minutes, we'll be back to answer questions. So the way it starts off is, we talk about different styles of leadership as a format of, how do I need to arrive in this? And if you can imagine the day before COVID took place, this wasn't even on your radar. This probably wasn't your biggest concern. Your biggest concern was going to work, dealing with that particular client, maybe talking with your staff about performance issues, or maybe doing something to get the job out the door. That was where you were at. And then we have this COVID thing where everything gets shut down. And in that moment, your brain triggered. Your brain did something that it had to, in some way, shape, or form, pull up, if you will, a step-by-step way to handle a crisis situation. Now, depending on your background, and how you were raised or the things you've been through in the past, if you've never had a crisis situation like this, your brain probably went and it did nothing except flatline. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but we usually have a way that we handle some form of crisis. And in that moment, you're going to have, yourself kick in. And today we're going to talk about what was good about that and what you're going to learn about yourself going forward, and maybe some simple steps to actually help you get going. So that's leadership number one. Courageous leaders need to step it in. Then what we have is, in a normal day, leadership is very interesting. We typically come to work, we influence the people around us. By the way, leadership is influence. So it's all about how you influence your employees and help better performance. It's about how you influence that new potential client. It's how you influence your vendors or your suppliers. It's all about influencing for a win-win, typically. So, leaders face challenges every day. They rise to the challenge. They get the challenge done and the day goes on. And it's just seamless when you're working in your business and you're moving forward. Life is good. That changed the minute that COVID came. Now in a crisis situation, because COVID qualifies for crisis, and just so we all have a context here, this information was actually written for the Ukraine. I was working with an educational institution in the Ukraine when they had their civil riot. And it actually broke out about 4 days before I was going to present on leadership for them. And they asked me to write up something about what to do in crisis, so they would know how to handle things in a crisis. So, here's some things about crisis. Number one, you're in chaos and you're in the unknown. For most people, the unknown is a very scary place, and it causes them to have an emotional response. It's extreme, it's intense, it's not normal, it's not business as usual. So very much something to know, and I don't have to tell you the obvious, but it's exactly that. And it affects everybody differently in a different time. And what I mean by this is that you can have an employee that you're working with one day and they're going steady, straight, like business as usual, they're responding, doing an exceptional job. And then the next moment, literally hours later, they're actually in an emotional overwhelm, shut down. There could be heavy emotions like tears, or they could be irritated. All of those things can happen in the same day, and do happen every single time that this takes place. We've had clients that I've been on the phone with in the first number of weeks 3 or 4 times, because they're triggering, which means that their emotions are heightened and they're responding amplified, and they don't know how to think things through like they normally do, right? They're operating from fear. And so when they're triggered, that just doesn't work the same way. We operate differently. Or they're phoning me because somebody in their employment is actually triggered and they don't know how to help them. And most of the people that we work with, pretty much every single one of them, really do want to help their employees and help them become better and do a better job. But this, for us, we've never been tested like this as a leader unless you've been through something like this. And in North America, this ranks as probably one of the biggest, kind of situations that we've ever had when it comes to a crisis. So it will turn around and amplify your leadership. It will turn around and show you the cracks in how you lead. It'll show you how, your thinking really is. It'll show you how resilient you are when you bounce back up. It'll help you, pull out that champion inside of yourself when you get kind of angry and go, enough of this COVID thing. I'm going to put my head down and go to work. And so crisis will amplify your leadership. Now, the first thing we have to understand is leadership has a number of components. And the first one starts with you. You have to lead yourself effectively. And I'm going to teach you some things here about that. Nothing that's probably brain science in the sense of, shocking or new, but it's very important for me to bring it up. And then we're going to talk about how to lead your employees. The first one is really all about you. And remember that this qualifies for you and everybody else, but there are 5 ways that we respond when we're in a crisis. And you probably heard fight or flight. Well, there's 3 others. So we have fight, which means I want to fight it off and I want to push myself to the limit. I'm going to attack, or I'm going to flight, which is meaning I'm going to take off and run. The other ones, I want to fix the problem. Some way, shape, or form, I'm going to try and fix it. Fixers actually are probably a larger population than the fighters or the flighters. Number 4 is freezing. People will freeze, and it's that deer in the headlight look in their eyes. They're unable to actually move forward. They may spend a lot of time on the internet just researching COVID because they don't know what to do. They're frozen. And frozen people tend to feel like they can't focus. They feel like they're overwhelmed. They might even tear up. They might have all kinds of heavy emotions going on, and they don't know what's going on or why it's taking place. And the last part, for number 5 of those 5 F's is the people that forget it. They go, yeah, I'm not even going to buy into this. They go, forget it, move on, man. This is all just a hoax, right? And so we've seen that on the news where there's actually groups of people that actually are at the forget it stage. I don't want to deal with this, so therefore I'm just going to imagine it's not there. It's kind of like being an ostrich where you put your head in the sand, you can't even see what's coming to attack. That's what's going on with different people. And the interesting part is that we all consider who you and I are, have a natural, normal way that we respond first, and then we might go second, okay? So think back to the moment where your brain accepted COVID and it was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And in that moment, did you decide to fight it, fly it away? Did you want to try and fix the problem? Were you frozen in time, or did you forget it? Now I'm going to just, kind of be a little bit of self-discovery here and be, open with you and kind of tell. I actually got to the place where I was overwhelmed. I had a great program for operating a crisis. I had it when I was a kid. And for some reason, I did all the steps correctly and it wasn't working for me. It wasn't kicking in. So I actually phoned my mentor and I said, hey, I'm doing everything correctly, but I'm just overwhelmed. I can't get it. I don't know what's going on. And I talked to two of my mentors, and the second mentor asked me like 3 questions. And if I told you who it was, you guys would know him. But he turned around and he actually got, that one question that made my brain go click. There was one step in my series of things I used to do to be successful in a crisis situation that I'd kind of missed. I actually got it wrong. So when I got refocused again, then I got my head on correctly and I was able to rise. So even somebody like me that understands the concept can have a moment of, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do and I'm not thinking clearly. Okay. So that means that if it's happening for me, it'll happen for every one of us. You just have to know that that's the thing that you need to do. So what do you do to kind of help yourself out? Well, let's make it really simple. 1, limit the negative input. Why? Because all that negative input will actually change the way you're going to think. So you want to, limit it. I mean, this thing's going on and all we need to do is have, if you will, guideposts. We don't need to do the play-by-play. There's no benefit to doing the play-by-play. It's not like you're going to miss anything, because when something important happens, it gets reported 8,000 times before the next day shows up. And the media sensationalizes things and play with your emotions while they're doing it. So please don't do that. The second part of this is get a support team. This is a good friend that's got a clear head, that's really straight. This could be a business partner. This could be a coach. It could be a therapist. It could be a professional of any sort that's going to help you recalibrate your brain and, get yourself in the right place. We have past clients that are coming back and saying, Rich, if I need you, can I phone you? And the answer is yes. Absolutely. Why? Because I want business owners to have their mind in the right place. And sometimes all I need to do is ask a question or two and get them back on track, and they can operate for another week or so or 2 days, whatever it is. That's what we have to do. So please take care of yourself first. That's the number one thing. The second or the last part here would be to keep a productive routine. Now that we're all working from home and Zoom is our new best friend, yes, you need to wear clothing when you're actually at work, and it's probably wise not to walk around in your underwear, even though we only see the upper part of your body. Why? Because psychologically speaking, and I know some of you are going, hey, how did you know, Rich? Well, because I've been here. I've been here for 5 or 6 years. And, we study things and we understand that people start to go down psychologically the minute that they're not actually in a work environment or force themselves to come to work. So, when we help a company, and we've done this in the past where we help companies take their employees and actually make them remote or partially remote, which may be the new trend coming up, where we, have one office and 2 or 3 people share it, like it's kind of co-op, so I get 2 days one week and 3 days the next week so I can meet my clients, but I'm working from home all the time. And what happens is it takes 3 to 6 months for them to psychologically get into a good routine at work. Productivity tanks the minute that somebody goes and works from home, because there's too many other distractions. Our brain has set up our home as our safe place. And when I start to think about work, unless I have a separate office, my brain doesn't go into work mode. So I will go into work mode or go into an office sitting at a dining room table, and my brain cannot shift. Now, I've been doing this for 13, 15 years, I guess now, where I've been working from home off and on, and I'm pretty proficient at it, pretty good at it. But it takes a while to get into the mindset. So, what do you know? Well, everybody had to work from home. So expect productivity to go into the tank. It's tanking down, not doing really well. And your main thing to do for you is to understand that you need to get dressed every morning at your regular time, get your cup of coffee, designate a place for, what I call work, whether that's a separate, corner or a separate desk, but something psychologically that you can do that say, I'm at work today. Right? And go for it for 4 hours, then take a coffee break, 2 hours, whatever you got to do, but then you're off and running. Now let's talk about others. Others are important, but I guess we're going to go right into talking about what, this all is all about when it comes to assessing the situation. So I'm just backtracking a little bit here. There is a 3-step process I'm going to get you to kind of consider. When we're assessing the situation, which probably is changing every 2 days. As I was driving to work this morning, I realized when I put this initial this particular presentation together, and we actually, got on with the chamber, it was a different situation that I had to speak to than today. And so, you have to turn around and probably every day or two, take time to assess everything. So it's like, what do I know about what's going on? When are we going to be reopening? Because that's a new word that's actually popping up every day now. And they're now talking it's going to be in the next 2 to 3, 4 weeks, which is fantastic and exciting. You want to make sure you collect all the information from valuable sources, but don't overspend time on it. You want to take a look at your resources. How's your finances? How are your people? How are your emotional supports? Those are all resources too. I wish I could tell you that it's all about finances, but there is a whole pile of businesses right now that won't be here in 2 or 3 months that look like phenomenal businesses that just weren't set up right, or they didn't have the right leadership. And so you have to have your mind set for success coming forward, because otherwise it's just never going to lead you where you want to go. And you want to keep your mind open. And this is harder than it sounds. Open minds actually allow you to see things for what they are. And so great questions to ask yourself in this matter would be, okay, what if? What if it was different when we came back to work? What if it was the same when we came back to work? What if, based on what I know, that the marketplace gets going again, but it gets going in different stages? What kind of opportunities are going to be there? What if my major competition actually didn't make it through? How will I turn around and grab this opportunity to pick up market share? There will be a lot of what I would call unsung champions that are come out of this because they are ready and they got their head in the game faster than their competition. That's the thing that's going to make it or break it for you as a business owner, is how do you get your head open to opportunities so that you can take a look at it. Now, I went to a virtual lunch or breakfast meeting with my good mentor and friend, and we started talking about possibilities. Some companies that may not make it, that have great business models that we could actually purchase coming out of this, because it's a possibility. And so you got to keep your mind well open for that. If you're stuck in the day-to-day, you can't take time to think. So schedule it in your calendar. 1 hour to dream about the future really makes a big difference. Now, let's talk about leadership. When it comes to focus and vision, focus is really simple. What you focus in on is what you become. Less is more, of course. So if you have a simple focus, I'm going to do this today, you'll get more done. Clear and easy to understand when you're working with people makes a radical difference. Don't make things complicated. We're going to do this, 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 this. One thing at a time, get them to do it, then get them to come back to, because people are overwhelmed. That's a great thing to do. I always say future focus, but what I'm saying is, look ahead, don't look behind. If we look behind, we get the same thing over again. If we look ahead, we're looking for opportunity. So we have had clients that have had their best months ever in this whole year. In the last month or two, or pardon me, week or two, they've had their best weeks ever because they finally got their mind shifted from what was happening to what I need to do to get my business going, right? And I'm thinking of one particular long-term client of ours that really went out last week and just nailed it, killed it, and got all kinds of closed business and a whole bunch of proposals out the door by himself, and did just as much as a team of salespeople. It was actually remarkable. So you have to do that. And I have to believe that this is already going to change, because if you don't believe it, what'll happen is your mind will play tricks on you and you won't get your brain to open up. So I always look at it and go, okay, so what if we were fast forwarded 3 months in the future, and all of this was history? We're sitting there having a cup of coffee and we were talking about it like, yeah, do you remember when? Get your brain to play that trick, because it's a psychological game you can use with yourself to help you focus in on, yeah, I remember that, and then this took place, and then this happened, and everybody thought this would happen. And here's my story on that one. Do you remember back in Y2K? And if you're not old enough to know what Y2K is, it's okay. But at the year 2000, 1999, about March, April, they started to pronounce that there was going to be a massive catastrophic failure of our infrastructure because the computers that we were using at the time didn't have the capability to switch to the year 2000. And everybody went ballistically crazy. And I remember storing food, I remember storing water, and I'm just gonna tell on myself, I remember not really knowing what was gonna happen and sitting up on December 31st, at 11:58, waiting for the clock to go down and waiting for the end of the world to come. And thinking to myself, I wonder how bad it'll be. And it went out and it happened and the year 2000 came and nothing took place. It was and then they had all kinds of reasons why that took place, right? But the point of the matter is sometimes we get so wrapped up in the hype of it all that we forget the reality of it all. So my caution to you in this moment is, as bad as COVID is, and as crazy as it can affect us, we've done the right things and we're in a good place. So please continue to move forward mentally. Your mental mindset is actually more important than the reality of what takes place here. So we go forward. Now let's talk about leadership of others, managing staff and clients, and they do fit into the same category, and they will be relatively the same when it comes to what's going on. Your staff, your clients need you to be decisive, and they need you to be consistent. And when you're thinking about this, I want you to ask yourself two questions. The two questions are really, really simple. What do they need from me? And sometimes that's nothing more than just you listening. And I mean that out loud, and I mean that sincerely. And if you're not a great listener, listening is one of those things where you turn on your ears, you go, how are you doing? Question mark, not a yes or no answer, by the way. We call those open-ended questions. What do you think about that? Try and get them talking. Why? Because emotions are very unique in the sense that they need to be processed. So emotions come from our back of our brain, and when we have an emotional response, the best way we can actually deal with that and get people to calm down is actually listen to them and let them have the emotions they need to. And they will actually, go all the way to the bottom, and then they'll kind of pop, if you will, and come back up logical. But you'll never be able to talk somebody logically out of an emotional response. Never going to happen, right? And so the best thing that you can do is listen. It's the number one skill. So ask open-ended questions. How are you doing? What's happening today? What are you feeling? Right? And then listen. You don't have to solve the problem. You don't have to even get into it until they kind of go, oh, yeah, I guess I could do this. I guess I could do that. So it's less work for you to try and solve the problem, but it requires that you slow down and stay focused in on what the people you're working with, your employees, your right hand, and all of those things. You've got to get them there, because they will not do anything productively until they're calm. That's number one. Number two, how do you need to show up as a leader? Now, what I mean by this is, as a leader, we show up every single day. We can show up as a 10 powerful, strong leader, and everybody knows it the minute we walk in the room, or we can be in stealth mode and show up like a 2 and nobody even knows we're there. And so as a leader, what do people need to see in you? I remember walking into my office one day, and my business manager and my partner, they're going, oh yeah, don't tell Rick, just let him try it. And they're all kind of freaking out a little bit. And I could tell that something was up. And I go onto my computer and I, log in, and all of a sudden Google pops up and it went kind of a funky screen saying not available. And I went, isn't that interesting? And little did I know before that, what had happened is the two of them had actually got on the computer and their brains went, oh my goodness, we can't get access to any of our files. We can't get access to our calendar. And they gasped because something had changed. I walked in and went, that's interesting, right? And then I picked up my phone because I still have my calendar on my phone and I could still do my job, right? But the two types of responses can happen. And so every single time you have to ask yourself, how do I need to show up? What are people expecting me to be in my business, in my life, in my, as a parent? How are they expecting me to show up? And when you decide how you're going to show up, guess what? You will. When you decide to be strong and powerful in a rough time, you will. When you decide to have your head on straight, you will. It's just making a choice to do it. Now you might say, Rich, you don't understand how stressful I am. I get it. You don't have to have all your crap together. You don't have to have all your pieces in line, and everything doesn't have to be perfect in your life for you to be strong and powerful. People like authentic leaders when they don't have everything figured out, right? Just like me, I have had my moments. Just like my business partner, Fallon, she's my daughter. She's had her moments too. And the same with everybody in our office, including Michelle. We've all had our moments, but we all make it through. The thing that makes us powerful is the fact that we keep moving and moving forward. So that's what we need to do. Now, you want to make sure that you're consistent. You want to be real. You want to focus in on the positive. Why? Because there's enough negative. You don't need to add to it. If you're turning around and you're focusing in on the positive, without making it too ridiculous, sometimes people are like, it's all going to be fine. Please don't go to all going to be fine. It's better for you to be saying, yeah, this is really affecting things. We need to make a strategy around how we're going to survive this and go through that and actually prosper. That's what we have to think about, right? You know, we started a business here that we were gonna, you know, have a coactive area for coaches and have people come in. We got this large space in December, and we were just starting to market it so we could fill up all the seats and all the rest of that. The rent's, you know, a little bit bigger than we're used to, and it's a wonderful space that I'm sitting in all by myself today because nobody's coming out to, you know, come into an office space you know, to rent a desk. It's not happening. And so it's not going to take place. So things change, but the decision to actually succeed has not changed as far as we're concerned. So that's the way we need it. Now, understanding your emotional responses, well, really simply said, you know, if you have somebody that's having an emotional response, you know, get with them, have a talk with them, relax. They're not, you know, making this up. They're just having a natural, normal response. You know, help them go through their own thoughts and concerns if you can. If you turn around and really think about this, you're going to have somebody in your office probably that's going to pick up the emotional currents in the environment. And what I mean by that is that there's always somebody around that's highly sensitive to negative or positive emotion. And they can actually feel it when they walk into a room. And if that person's in your office, you'll know because they'll be just like a, if you will, a beacon sign for what's going on in the office. You can tell what's going on in the office by just checking in whether they're happy or sad, right? That kind of thing. We got to watch the media sensationalism so that we don't get ourselves out of control. And your team will be the same way. So if they're actually jumping on and spending a lot of time on the media and checking that all out, you're going to have to caution them. You're going to have to, you know, say, hey, you know what? Nothing's really changing. That's going to make relevant, real, you know, data for us today. Leave that alone and let's not go there because it's not helping you mentally, right? It's not helping you mentally get to where you need to. The other part is flooding. Flooding is when the emotions kick in and you have that fear or you have that flight or you have that fight, any one of those 5 F's, and your body secretes chemicals, if you will, that actually cause you to narrow your focus, and it makes you, you know, kind of run, if you will, and it's designed to actually keep you safe in a primal way, but in a regular context of us intellectually thinking, it shuts you completely down. So flooding is when people are no longer thinking with their, you know, logical brain, but they're being highly emotional, and that's when overwhelm, exhaustion, resilience, you know, kind of disappear. It also, you know, people just can have this when decision fatigue kicks in. You know, all of those different things take place. Now, you have to remember that every human being has their own situation that they're going through with this COVID thing. And that means your clients too. So I've got down here, your clients, you know, are having stress from personal triggers. Well, depending who they are, they can have big triggers. They might have no triggers, or they could be, you know, just having a lot of triggers. I've got people working on my house right now because we're putting in a basement suite. And the plumber came by and he's a great guy and, you know, he's handling everything, but you can tell he's a little uneasy. And we just needed to spend a little extra time talking, you know, and I don't think he's the kind of guy that talks too much. He's kind of just a do guy, but he just wanted to have a little chat about how to keep his head in the right place so he could make this happen. And that's exactly what, you know, I'm talking about. Spend the time when you get the time to listen to people and help them through it, right? It keeps you in the right mindset yourself by helping others. So they're going to have personal triggers. They're going to have amplified emotions. 1 minute, they're going to be mad at you. Next minute, they're going to think you're wonderful. They might scream at you. They might turn around and do all kinds of things. And that would trigger you, of course. And in a normal situation, you know, you would say, I don't want that client, but I want to let you know these are unnormal times. So if you have somebody that's not responding normally, just understand that this too is probably going to pass. And it'll be a different day when all of this takes place. Your clients are going through the media sensationalism. So watch the guy that wants to talk a lot about what's going on, because he may get you into such a funk that you might find your brain just needs to be kind of flushed out with a power washer afterwards to kind of get things going in the right direction. And then there's this resilience, this bounce back capability. Everybody has a different way of bouncing back. It all depends on what they've been through. Now, our millennials get a bad rap because they say they haven't, you know, they don't really know how to bounce. Well, you know, I think it's really boiled down to what we've been teaching them. I think if you really get right into it, you know, in the schools and stuff like that, you know, people can learn. You know, they can bounce, but we've never been here before. Remember that. So there's a huge opportunity for people to become very resilient and actually rise to the challenge. So watch for champions in your environment. There will be some that'll rise, and they're not necessarily who you think they are, but they're going to be people that are going to take this on and they're not going to lose a beat, and they're going to do exceptionally well through it all. And those are the kind of people that are going to lead our next generation of leaders, and you'd want to be one of those yourself. Now, here's our last, kind of wrap up to get us kind of thinking about where we're going. And, then I've got some things I'd like to say as well. The first part, is the step-by-step is always stepping into your leadership. Stepping in is that, when you wake up in the morning and you pull your socks and your shoes on, you put your jacket on, you go, okay, how do I want to show up today? The world is going into chaos. I'm going to choose how I show up today. You could have a little mantra that says, this too shall pass. I had a pastor friend of mine that we met at camp one year. And when the recession was taking place in Ontario years ago, he said to me, I said, well, what do you think about all this stuff, from your perspective? He goes, somebody was asking me about that the other day, about this recession. He said, I just told him that I have chosen not to participate. And I thought about it for a second, and I started to howl with laughter. And so you could choose not to get into the mania of the COVID-19 doom and gloom. You could just choose not to participate and carry on business as normal. And your brain will relax the minute you do that. You'll actually start to get your sleep. You'll actually calm down. You might even have a sense of humor about it all. I mean, after all, we now have masks that we could wear. We could put a happy face on it or a frown. We get to choose. But we're all walking around with masks on and all kinds of special gloves. We kind of look a little bit weird and wacky, right? And it's like a post-apocalyptic movie that we're kind of watching right now play out in real life. But it's not the end of times. So it's a very, very different thing. The step 2 is always to self-manage first. If you are not self-managing, taking care of yourself, you are no good to the people that you lead. Whether that's your spouse or your significant other, whether that's your children or your parents. But if you're not actually in the game and taking care of yourself, you cannot lead. So remember, people are relying on you, but rely on yourself first so you can actually be strong and take care of yourself. I've got leadership taking place with my parents, my wife, my children, who are all adults, by the way, and my team at work, my clients. I'm leading everywhere I turn around. Why? Because I can. And some days I'm empty and I don't lead anymore. I go home. But give what you got. But make sure you take care of you first, because you don't want to turn around and influence somebody with a negative thinking pattern that you may have because you're burnt out. So step 1. Step 2. Step 3, when you're leading others, decide to do so with some kind of moral character. When you're interacting with others, decide how you want to show up, right? And make that the key here, in the sense of what you're actually accomplishing to influence another human being in a good and positive way. There's lots of doom and gloom out there. We need some people that are encouragers, some people that are, putting a different spin on it, that, are rising to the challenge and not denying that it's a tough time, but also stepping up and making it happen. And that's the leadership posture and stance. Number 5, gathering the right information. Check the information that you need to. I found that I was much better, much happier the minute I started switching and only checking once every day at the end of the day. And now I check basically every 2 or 3 days. When they announce something new that's relevant and real, I'm no longer watching the live casts anymore, because it's irrelevant. The government's trying to do the best that they possibly can, but it's irrelevant. I mean, if we're going to make it coming out of this, it's not going to be by government aid. I can guarantee you that. It's going to be because of the creative nature of entrepreneurs stepping up to the plate and making things happen. But there may be new opportunities for us instead of what we were thinking was going to be our opportunity for 2020. But we'll have to adapt, change, and do that. And that's the last point here, is staying flexible. Once you've got that figured out in your brain that you're going to stay flexible, that's the part that actually allows you to get into the area that, brain is going to be available to new ideas. Think back to a time where you started your business. There was a moment where I was having a meeting with another thought leader, and he said to me, we now need to look at this as starting a new business. And I thought to myself, just him even saying that actually allowed my brain to kind of go into a new place and think about what was real and what was most important in that moment. And that's exactly what we need to be doing. We need to be taking a look exactly what needs to happen in those moments so that we can turn around and rise to the challenge. So are we off screen share by chance? Todd? Nope, we're not. Sorry, there it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we are off screen share, right? Stop share. There we go.
There we are.
Otherwise, you're looking at the picture of my beach, which I hope to get to sometime near the end of the year.
All
So
right.
we've got a few minutes for questions.
Yeah, that was very informative. Thanks, Rich. And again, just a quick note to everybody out there. If you have any questions, go to the submit question moderator option within your Zoom platform, and we'll get to those. I'm going to start with one right here that I found interesting. So I'll fire this one off to you, Rich. It says, just curious, you don't have to answer as this is an opinion question, but how do you view our Canadian political leaders' reaction to this event? They must have leadership training. Have they used any tactics you are aware of? It's such an uncertain time for them as well. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because as I'm watching them on a relatively daily basis, I was thinking the same thing. So it's curious what your thoughts are.
Absolutely. They've had leadership training, of course. I'm not going to get into a political bias one way or the other, so I'll leave that off the table, of course. But here's some things to kind of consider. When you think about what the current government has done, they have separated into different forms of leadership. So you have your main leader up front, who is actually, his whole purpose and format is to keep people calm. He gives us the big picture. He keeps us calm. He has the right tone of voice. He's empathetic. That's all he's there to do, right? He's not giving us the nuts and bolts. He's reassuring us, keeping us steady and calm. We can all learn from that by the tone of voice that he uses, the compassion that he uses. He doesn't deny that this is a tough time, but he also, talks about our resilience as a nation and how we can step up and do the job. So that was his role. Then he has experts, in the COVID, mechanics, if you will, itself. And then he's got the financial expertise coming on the other side. So he's got specific people when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of how things work. And they both have their different way of responding. So when it comes to the COVID people, they're very direct. They tell us what's going on. They're compassionate with those that have lost their life and the situation that's being created. But they're real. They're very real and authentic. Like, I've actually enjoyed watching, both of them, actually, the way they've been responding to, the COVID updates. It's straightforward. There's some science involved here. They're telling us to, stay steady, keep going. We're on the right track. We're going to see where we go. Don't get crazy about it. They're just reassuring all the way through. But in this particular thing, when you're watching on the TV, you can look at for what they call, that posture we were talking about. That's the thing that's showing up. It's posture, tone of voice, the right wording. By the way, I'm kind of a really focused on right wording. So if you use the right wording, you get the right results. If you don't use the right wording, you get the poor results.
Okay.
And they've been very, very good. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Okay, the next one I think goes back to one of your earlier slides of today. It says, I am stuck in freeze mode, but I don't have a mentor or somebody who knows the questions to ask to get me unstuck. Do you have any tips on how I can unstick myself?
Yeah, love that question.
Yeah.
No, call me.
So, for everybody that's out there, this will be, sorry, just quickly, we are going to reshare this. It's going to be posted on YouTube. It'll be on the Chamber site. And for, if you don't have Rich's information, the Chamber will share it immediately after this. So Rich, if you want to do it quickly now, just to put the little plug in.
Yeah, we run STOKE Growth Business Coaching and Rich Grof, performance coaching. I'm going to put my information in the chat for those of you who don't know me. I'd be glad to share a few minutes with you to give you some clues. When you're stuck, your brain will not receive information. So it's really hard, even if you know what to do, to run yourself through, an exercise. But here's a couple of things you could do. Number one, go and do some physical exercise. Number one, and do a lot of it until, go running, go walking, whatever your thing is, get some physical exercise, change your environment, get out of your home, go out and get the sunshine on your face, and just kind of, enjoy that, right? And do something to interrupt the pattern of thinking that you're doing. So, if you like music, put music on. If you like playing music, play it. With executives, what they do is they teach them how to knit. So they interrupt the patterns of their brains. So they stop their thinking so they can restart again. You need to stop your thinking to restart. So do something remedial like that you have to think about. Otherwise you hurt yourself, or you do something like running, like if you're not a real good runner, run, right? And that'll get you going, or take a bike ride, or learn how to knit, or learn a new skill so that you can actually stop your brain from focusing in on what's freezing you. And then you can reset and get lots of sleep and water, by the way. Just some basics about physiology.
And again, for those, Rich, you're right, you're bang on the money. And those are pretty much everyday tips too. They aren't just during the stress of COVID or anything else. Yeah. Those are everyday things. People need an actual break from a daily routine or from your routine of work. And when you find yourself locked up or frozen, you've got to do something to just step away for a little bit. Then you can come back fresh and clear. So good points there. Next one, how do you manage your media use? I'm struggling balancing trying to stay up to date with current events and not getting overwhelmed with such negative and scary news updates.
I actually only look at the media once a day. And so what happens is I go through it really quickly. I only allow myself a certain amount of time, like 2 to 3 minutes. And all I'm looking for is to look for the conditions that are showing me that things are changing. So I'm looking for keywords right now called recovery. That's all I want to read.
Yeah. So you look for the positive aspect of things right now.
I'm just looking for the next step so I can keep my mind moving forward. Because if I keep looking at how bad it gets, you get more bad, right? So I limit and I only focus in on what, the next step, should be, which is, how do I recover?
Okay, perfect. And the next one, this is real life too, and I've seen it before, and it is a tough one. And it says, if you make a quick decision, it turns out to be the wrong one. How do you unmake it? And how do you tell your team to start over or backtrack without losing respect or credibility from them?
What a great question.
Yeah.
Sit your team down and sit them and say, you know what, these are crazy and wacky times. You all know that. I'm going to make a decision. And, there's only 3 choices that you can ever make. It's yes, no, or delay. And I'm going to make based on what I have for information in the moment that I make that decision, I'm going to make a decision. And we might get started going forward. And then we might get new information. We might need to move slightly left or slightly right. So think of this like a journey from where we live in Barrie all the way to the other end to Vancouver. We may think we know what the course looks like, but we don't know where the detours are. But we have made a commitment to get all the way over to Vancouver, and we're going to do our best job to get there. And we have an approximate time. We know when we're leaving. That's about it. We start driving, but we don't know what we're going to account to for weather and or detours until we get on the road. That's what this is like. And yet every day we make it to Vancouver. And so we're going to do the same thing here. It's all going to be normal, and we're all going to make it through.
Perfect. All right, next one up. For those of us in the coaching space, do you recommend keeping our laser focus on our ideal client or expanding our marketing messaging to be accessible to more people in need of support?
You got the skills, please share them. Coach to coach, if you got the skills, please share them. From an economic perspective, there's going to be tons of people that aren't going to be able to afford it. Don't worry about it. Do what's right. If you got specialized skills, help. There will be new programs that you can put on coming out of this. People will need us even more coming out of this because there's going to be PTSD from COVID in the workplace. And there's going to be all kinds of new environmental changes in the workplace, maybe even including remote working from Zoom, et cetera, et cetera. We will be very, very valuable. And so provide value now because people don't have the ability to pay. Don't worry about it. If they can pay, accept. If they can't, don't worry about it. That's my attitude.
Yeah, perfect. All right, next one. What are some ways you can manage stress while working at home with kids and trying to lead a failing business?
Number 1, lower expectation. If you've never worked with kids at home, let me tell you, we did. Our kids were homeschooled and we worked opposite shifts and we had it all worked out. It took a long time. So when you're first starting this whole thing, remember your kids are not used to you being at home. They're not used to being out of school or daycare, and they are totally confused, and it takes a while for them to get into routine. That's step 1. Step 2 is that you can't have expectation of them having an understanding about keeping personal space when you're working. We've had several presentations done on Zoom where the little ones actually interrupt, and my attitude is bring them in. Say hi. Okay, they say hi, they leave, they're gone, right? Just yesterday, we had a 3-year-old on one of our calls. It's all good. But lower your expectations, and every day will be a new day. It will get better if you keep working it on time. My kids were trained that, if I had my headset on, they'd stand at the doorway. They knew where to stand. And they were like 3 and 5, and they would put their head, they'd hand like this. And if they did that and I went, yeah, I'm on the phone, they'd just walk away because they knew I was on the phone and couldn't interrupt them. Okay. So we had hand signals that we used, but you don't have any of that made up right now. So just remember that productivity is an optional word. The only time you're going to probably get any kind of real work done is when everybody's sleeping.
Okay.
Just going to say it. So allow that to increase over time. But what happens is we say we got this much work to do, and then all the chaos happens, and all that happens is you get amplified and less gets done, and the kids get more off. So don't do that. Get your kids settled first, then you'll get productivity.
Perfect. And the next one is a good one. It's in regards to Zoom meetings, and I can relate to it. As I said to you earlier, Rich, I'm fairly new to this, and I'm doing it obviously for the chamber. We're doing it with our Rotary Club. I'm doing it with Kempen Fest and other things. So we'll go into the question here, and it says, there is something missing in Zoom meetings. They are side glances, body language, and other cues to understanding, agreement, disagreement that we may miss in these meetings. What tools or methods do you recommend to try and ensure that video meetings are successful and not causing too much Zoom fatigue?
Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And so you have to know how much you can do. So that's step one. When you get on a Zoom call and you notice that somebody's checked out, check in with them. So I was on one yesterday, and I said to the individual, I said, I noticed you zoomed out. And I made a joke about it because she literally zoomed right out. Like she pushed herself right back. She went from, this big in the screen to that. I said, are you processing, or, where are you at? Right. And I just asked for permission to do that. And she kind of giggled and she said, actually, I'm just kind of thinking to myself. And it started a phenomenal conversation about something that she was thinking about, but she pushed back so she could actually think. Body language still happens on Zoom intensely. If somebody's distracted, talk to them about it. Say, hey, it looks like you've got somebody over there that you're distracted to. How's that work for you? And they might say, well, actually, my kids are right over there and they're giving me hand signals. And we have a big laugh about it. Now, you might get somebody who's an auditory learner as well. That means that the only thing that they need to do is listen. And they're like this usually half the time. And they're listening to you, and they're getting every single thing you're saying, every tonality, and they're absorbing it, but they don't need to make eye contact. Eye contact's irrelevant to them, and they could be looking up like this, and they're going, well, yeah, I'm not sure if that's the way I like. And so don't take it personally. Just notice and just say, do you like to learn by listening? And if that's the case, turn off the screen and don't worry about it.
Yeah, because the problem is, you're right. Optics, you're looking at these people going like you zoned out. Are you not part of this meeting? Are you not paying attention? And without knowing that individual or how they react to things, you're sitting there going, you're zoned out. Like, sorry if I'm boring you, then just get out of the meeting. Like, yep. That's a tough call. And I've seen that in meetings. So I was glad that question came up because it is unique. The next one, Rich, we sort of touched on it, but it's a different aspect of it. This says, any tips on leading my kids while I'm trying to be productive working from home? I know you're not a teacher, at least not a teacher.
Well, my wife's a teacher.
Oh, well, then you've got this.
And we always joke because I teach different things than she does. And she's always saying that my stuff is important. I say her stuff's important. The interesting thing about leading your children are what I would call the most organic style of leadership that you can have, because they respond instantaneously to your leadership. So if you're calm, if you're steady, if you're consistent, if you're on target, and if you've set the expectation at a reasonable level, they're more than likely going to meet it. They may challenge you because they're not feeling well. They may have a minor freak out, depending on the age. They might go into pause on their own. They might be overwhelmed by having a natural response to this whole thing because they might understand it a little bit, but they're going to respond to how you're responding. So if I walk into somebody's environment and the two parents are actually very, stressed, the child will be acting irregular, and they'll probably be, out of sorts. They'll be screaming, they'll be yelling, everybody will be hot and tense. So the best thing you can do from a leadership perspective is, one, decide how you're going to lead, right? And, be very, very clear about that. And there's nothing wrong with having a freak out moment, but do it in private and then get back to, grounded, and then bring it to your child, because they need you to be strong. They need you to know that you're actually creating a safe environment for them. And that applies to your business too, right? If the boss isn't really stepping up and the boss is freaking out, the employees are not going to be in good shape.
Great. Okay, Rich, we're going to go into our last question, because then after that, we'll go into some closing remarks from you and myself, and that way we'll keep right on time with everybody here. So the last one would be, and again, another interesting one. Should you ever tell your team that you are stressed? I don't want to seem weak if I'm being authentic.
I think you can tell them that you're stressed and tell them what you're doing to take care of yourself as a great example. So I had a complete meltdown on one call, not a meltdown. I said something and a vendor said to me, wow, Rich, that really sounds negative. And I go, oh, I said, no, you don't understand. This is what we're going through. This is before I got my head kind of set up, and I was responding in one of those 5 F's from the COVID thing. And then the other person on the call was my daughter. And she goes, no, it seems like you're really stuck on this. And I go, oh, maybe I'm emotionally compromised. I said, I apologize. I think I need to leave this meeting right now. And I left the meeting, got off the meeting, and took care of myself. I went back and talked to that person next week, and I said, I apologize for last week. I was just, emotionally compromised. I have since gone to my own, right-hand coaches. I know what the problem was. I'm now much better, and I've got my head on. And we all had a good laugh about it, right?
That's real life nowadays. Yeah.
It's real life. I mean, you cannot be what you're not. But people will watch how you handle and what strengths you show. If you turn around and say, I'm emotionally this, or I'm feeling highly stressed, and you use that and you don't actually do anything about it, that's different. But, give them great examples of what you're trying until you get it right. Because they need to know that, they don't have to have it all together. Nobody's got it all together. Nobody knows what's going on here. We're making it up as we go. It's a whole new world tomorrow. So let's see how this happens, right?
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, Rich, any closing remarks from you?
My hat goes off to each one of you for showing up on the call. You are leaders. In the minute that you actually interact with another human being, you choose to be a leader or a follower. They're the same thing, really, in my context. It's about how we influence people. And I think because of COVID actually pulling us apart, if you will, and putting us on Zoom, we are now getting more consciously aware how much we need to be around other people. And we're starting to understand, because we are showing up differently, what our influence can do or not do. And so this is a huge opportunity in this COVID environment for you to be a leader by being positive, uplifting, encouraging, supportive, and, leading your family through a new crisis. It's interesting, if you're a parent, what you're going to help your kids learn now is probably the best case scenario on how they should rise to the challenge, so that nothing will ever slow them down again, no matter what really happens. Because we're not going to see too much like this again in our upcoming future. This is kind of a one-off, and it's a great opportunity for them to learn how to adapt to situations that aren't actually normal. So take it on as a leadership challenge to actually create a way in your mind how to rise for yourself and those around you, and you'll find that you have a different perspective, because there's something to be learned here that you can carry forward.
Excellent. Thanks, Rich. On behalf of the Chamber, and also, I'll come up with this one soon, and our friends down at the Sandbox, and I appreciate them. They're tied in with the Chamber heavily on all this to make sure this information is getting out. I found today extremely informative, as I'm sure the participants did. I picked up quite a few points from this, so it's one of those things you're never too old to learn, and that was extremely enlightening, insightful. And again, the Chamber will be sharing this for everybody on YouTube and on the Chamber site to make sure that if there's anything that you missed, or you want to replay it or hear it again, or you just want to refresh on this, please go and follow that. So in closing, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us and for the great work that everybody's doing in their businesses every day. We urge every leader in our community to immediately shift the focus to the singular objective of slowing the pace of the transmission of the coronavirus. Both our federal and provincial governments have enacted measures that will only be effective if all employers step up and do their part to protect our health and welfare. All levels of government have expressed a commitment to protect business, employees, and everyday Canadians to ensure that we all come through this together. The Barrie Chamber and the Sandbox are here to help you through this. Please feel free to email or call if you have any questions or concerns. Also, we implore everybody again to shop local. It's more important than ever that we are supporting our local businesses to ensure that they're here when we get through this, whether it's something, ordering a takeout from a restaurant, buying a gift card, every little bit will help someone. And then lastly, and we always finish off with this one because I follow the Premier and others on this, strongly urge everyone to stay at home where possible and especially avoid travel to cottage country and limit the spread of this virus. The hospitals and the grocery stores in those areas, they are not equipped for the influx of people at this time, and they can quickly become dangerously overwhelmed with that influx. So with that, I'd like to thank you again, Rich, and thank all the participants and wish everybody a great day.
My pleasure. Great. Well said. See you, folks.
Take care. Thank you.